Yes, people. Yeah, finally, Gunnar is back talking about Arsenal. Obviously, a shit show of a week with things that are going on, but we move past that. Now, the season is coming to an end. One final game against Brighton, a nemesis, Neil Maupay. Can he come back to take, well, not even revenge, really, just to do us over again? And or do we thank him because he did get us the FA Cup win in reality? Because if Leno hadn't got injured, we wouldn't have seen the emergence of Emi Martinez and maybe the FA Cup wouldn't have come home and no European football this season. So it is a bit of a topsy-turvy kind of conversation. But obviously I have got Luke here with me today. How you doing, Luke, man? How you feeling?
I'm good, man. I'm excited for the season to be over, to be honest. It's been a long season. It's been exhausting as a fan to watch, but you know, there's been a lot of buzz around the club and a lot of talks suggesting that we are going to be in for a busy window, which will excite every fan. It should do, but it's whether they'll actually follow up on all this promise and all these things that they've kind of made to us. Will they happen? Will these deals happen? We'll have to wait and see. But I'm excited. Is all I can say.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's talks of Basuma coming in. There's talks of, well, Emi Buendia or maybe Odegaard. And obviously, Awar is still in the picture in the background. And obviously, we'll kind of obviously get into kind of who we want to bring in.
Yeah,
But what we'll do is, I want to find out because obviously we have got Brighton at the last game of the season with the potential of finishing in the top seven when in reality we were looking like we could finish 12th or 14th. Now, overall for the season for you, like what have you made of it? Because since obviously December, we have stepped it up and the form has been good. And
mm.
I know we've had, I think the losses hurt us more. That's why we've deemed them to be a lot worse than they are. But if we had a good start and we kind of had that form from December at the beginning of the season, would you change your opinion on Arteta, or are you thinking, nope, I've seen too much that's not right with Arteta than anything right with him?
I think I think this season has kind of made me realise that I don't think he's. I think as of now, I do think he's a bad manager. But the reason I can class him as a bad manager is because he hasn't got the experience to be a good manager yet. Every good manager needs managerial experience, and I think Arteta hasn't got that. He's got some coaching experience from Pep, but that's coaching rather than managing. And I think his lack of experience has really shown this season. He's had some poor man management decisions. He's had some poor tactical decisions, and I think this season, I guess, the way I see this season is there's been good and there's been bad, and sadly the bad has kind of outweighed the good. Losing in a European semi-final, that was a bad. Getting to the semi-final was all right, but I mean, I wouldn't say we were the best to get there. I think there were ties where we, kind of scraped it, like Benfica, even Slavia. The first leg was absolutely poor, and we had to have a big second leg to turn up. But I mean, in a way, it's been good. It's helped. We've got to see a lot of the younger players like Smith Rowe, who's had an emergence this season. What an emergence he's had! He's been a saving grace for us this season. Bukayo Saka, every Arsenal fan loves him, and he's been absolutely phenomenal this season. Sadly, due to our underperforming this season, he's been burnt out by the fact he's been overplayed. But I mean, there are things from this season that will make you excited for next season. Like you'll see a Saka fully fit and fully rested and ready for a new season. You'll see a Pepe who seems to be really wanting it and he seems to be on his game. You'll see a Martinelli who will be 100% back to his fitness and back to his best. We'll see a Smith Rowe again, ready and hungry for more minutes. We've got all this promising players coming through and all this talk of a promising window. But I mean, we all know Arteta is going to be in the job next season, so I'd say the only thing we can do is let him have the summer window and let him have the start of next season. If things go well, which they tend to do at the start of our seasons, I think this season we went 4 games and we got 9 points from 4 games or something like that, which is a good start. It's just whether we can keep. I think the problem we've had over the past few years is consistency. We've never been the most consistent team. So it'll be an interesting one next season. But I mean, I guess for now, I'll just kind of have to completely remove my opinion of Arteta and how I stand with him, and just kind of let him do his job, because it's very clear the board aren't going to get rid of him. So we'll have to wait and see.
I'm just going to put a bit of an optimistic spin on it because you know what? I think his ideas aren't the worst. I mean, they haven't come off because personally, I just don't think there's key areas where the players haven't been either fit or we just don't have the caliber of player to play the football he's probably demanding of them. Because if you think about it, obviously, we've not had Kieran Tierney for pretty much most of the season. He's played maybe like 5 to 6 games and then gets injured. And when you look at Thomas Partey as well, he came in injured. And even before the season started, to be fair, he wanted a number 10. He was demanding a number 10 over even the likes of Thomas Partey. And then when that number 10 came in, obviously in this case it was Smith Rowe, and we've seen a whole transformation of the team. So maybe like there's parts of what I'm seeing from him that I'm like, okay, maybe he understands where the problems are going, but maybe he's not getting the backing. Look, there's always going to be questions over his managerial style and career and whether he's actually fit to be a coach of the magnitude of Arsenal Football Club. But obviously in this sort of series, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting ourselves into the positions of like the likes of Edu, Raul and Arteta, and making those decisions to see if we want to keep the players, sell them, or we're unsure. So obviously what I'm going to do is bring up a tier list, obviously made by Luke himself. So thanks for that. And let me add that into the stream. So obviously here you can see the way we've done it is the players who are literally contracted to Arsenal, so no loan players or players who are potentially coming in. These are players who are literally contracted, who we have the opportunity to sell or keep, not like Matt Ryan or Ceballos, who are basically, it's up to us whether we want to sign them on permanently or not. And that's going to be talked about in the transfer segment, about the links that we've got in terms of Buendia. Obviously, we've got links to Max Aarons. We've got links to the likes of Edward and etc. etc. There's loads of links coming to Arsenal, even Basuma being one of the main ones. And we'll talk about who we would bring in and who we're going to sell. So obviously what I'll do is going into the order of it. So the first person to ask is Leno. What are your opinions on him?
I think I used to be a fan of Leno, but I think this season he's kind of hinted that like he's getting up there now. He's getting a bit older. I know keepers tend to have a longer career kind of age range.
Longevity,
yeah. But I think this season, he's been very poor. I know he's been better recently, but I mean the season he's had, and I think sadly he's not really the player to suit Arteta's system of trying to play from the back, because he's quite poor with the ball at his feet, and there are options out there for cheap that would be a better alternative to Bernd Leno. So for me, I'd sell him.
Would you consider keeping him as like a backup option, for example, or do you think, nah, we need to cut our ties with him, no sentiments here? Because for me, I actually do think we need to sell him. I don't think for me, the way I look at a goalkeeper now is they need to be commanding of their box. The playing out of the back, okay, it depends on the system you're playing, but a lot of even Klopp demands that as well. Even if you look at sort of the top managers or the top ranked managers, all of them require a level of playing out of the back, and Leno doesn't even offer a basic level of that, to be honest. I think a lot of his decision making has been off. Now, I would ask you, would you keep him as a backup? But the problem is when he comes in, will he be able to do the job? And my answer is no. But obviously Luke is saying, and we're both saying it's time to sell him and cut our ties and get a player, because there is one, Onana, who's reportedly only valued at about £7.5 to £10 million, which, to be honest, isn't even a lot of money. But obviously we do agree on the stance of Leno. Now, this one is going to be a bit of a weird one because I kind of know the answer, but I'm intrigued to see whether you go for a different answer, and that is obviously Runnison.
Again, it's sell. I think he's pretty poor. I mean, he only got really one game to kind of show that, and he had an absolute howler. He was very poor. I don't think he's like, there are keepers at our club now like Carl Hine, who I'd rather keep as a backup, who we've had training with the club for years. I think even if we don't want to use Hine or the young lad Okonkwo, I'd suggest going out there, and there was talks linking us to Freddie Woodman, who again as a third choice wouldn't be the worst. But I just think again we just need to really clear out the deadwood, which is I'd say one of the main objectives of this window. And sadly, Renarson, there wasn't the good thing is it's not like we paid a lot. We paid 2.5 million for him. I just try and offload him this summer because I just don't think he's good enough.
Yeah, because I mean, it's pretty much confirmed, but not confirmed is Matt Ryan's pretty much signing because obviously he's free at the end of the window.
Yeah.
So there's one sort of, I'd say a second choice-ish keeper ready. So all we really need to do is go out and get a first team, and then we can use our youth for the third. And for me, I actually agree. I was considering loaning him because there was a lot of people suggesting it's nerves, and there's an element of nerves to him. But I don't know, because I've not seen anything to suggest that, he should be staying at the club. Obviously, we've got GK in the building saying, get them all out. Look, right, I would, but let's be real, right? We can't clear out every single player and bring in a whole new 25. Oh, he said, Luke, you've already got some criticism here saying, don't want to hear you speak highly of Louise either. You are a GE. I don't know what that means, but yeah.
It's me and Gooner Express. We were talking on the last Arsenal show. We were talking about how we rate David Luiz, but apparently GK is not a fan of him for some reason. But it is what it is.
I mean, we'll get in. I mean, let's just do that first. And David Luiz, as GK's here, let's arouse some fans, because I'm going to say my opinion on him. I think, obviously, we know he's going, but this is our decision. This isn't what's happening. This is what we want to happen. So that's just to clear things up a little bit. For me, I think for what the younger players are saying, where they look up to, look, don't ask me why, I don't know, but they do look up to him. For some reason, he's seemingly, even Arteta saying it, the players are coming out and saying it, that he seems to be a leader in the dressing room. And what is the one thing this team and club are lacking is a character or a leader within the team. Now, he might not be the best example to use as a leader, but this season has shown me like what he can offer us, especially with this Arteta system of playing out the back. He does seem, this is the only one I can criticize Wolves, but even against Wolves, to be honest with you, I don't even blame him, because I can't believe that's a red card. A penalty, okay, fair enough, it is what it is, and if you want to give a penalty, but to give him a red card for not even touching him, it's a bit of a bullshit thing for me. But for that reason, I would put him in keep, but sell at the right price. But what are your thoughts on that one, Luke?
Pretty similar, to be fair. I think I see Dav Luiz as a good player to have in the squad, especially the squad. The climate of our squad is lacking leaders. Dav Luiz is a leader. He's won, I'm pretty sure, every trophy there is to be won, like major-wise. He's won Europa League. He's won league titles. He's won the Champions League.
Wasn't he there for the Champions League, I was about to say, yeah.
So, for me, I'd keep him. I wouldn't even actually go for the sell for the right price. I'd keep him because I think he'd become like what John Terry is doing at Aston Villa, a defensive coach, to kind of help breed the next set of young defenders. And especially with William Saliba coming into the first team squad, Luiz would have been a very good player to keep around and help coach him, because I said this on the Gooner show, on the Arsenal show last week. Saliba is a distributor similar to what David Luiz is, and
yeah,
he could use David Luiz's coaching to really help him refine that part of his game. So for me, I'd keep him. However, selling for the right, if it was us, I would be happy to sell him for the right price.
Do you know what? Yeah, I'll turn this into coaching role at the club, because there are some players who can probably get into that, but that's probably a category for me for David Luiz, because I've been saying it. I remember on Laguna should. I've been saying, for me, David Luiz should get a coaching role, if anything, at the club. I mean, he is coming to that age, especially with this knee injury. But I'm not too sure exactly what it is. I know it's not an ACL, but he's done something to his knee, which originally required surgery, but then apparently he was lucky enough that the damage wasn't that extent. So
Yeah.
I don't know, because I mean, he could get like a play. You know, like how there's player managers who can play, but they're also managers of the team. We could be giving him a coaching player role. So if absolutely needed, we'll bring him in, but keep him as like a coaching member, like you said, like what John Terry's doing. I think that would really suit him, especially at his time of his career, where he still has the importance in the club as a player would, because having that coach, and especially with the experience he has in terms of he's won everything other than national trophies, he has won everything. I think he's even won. Is it like the Nations Cup where
Federations Cup or something?
Yeah, Federation. Yeah, that's the one. He's won that as well. So he has gone around and he has been a big part of winning those trophies. So I'd put him in. I'd give him a coaching role personally, because, but then keep him as a player coach. So
I'd agree with that.
Because I mean, he can still play if absolutely needed, especially if we get this Conference League. We can give certain players a rest, and then obviously bring someone like David Luiz, who's in the squad, but he isn't the main part of the squad, and that could really, like you said, bring especially Saliba, who's basically a young David, not a young David Luiz, other than the mistakes yet. We'll find out, obviously, if he carries those sort of mistakes in him. But let's kind of move on to. I'm trying to find the centre backs. Where are the centre? Oh, let's go to Gabriel, because that's the first one I've seen. Obviously, do I really need to ask about this one?
No, keep 100%.
Yeah, I don't even think the fans want an explanation for that one. Who's the next one? I'll go with Mavropanos. To be honest with you, I ain't seen him. I've not loan watched him or anything, so I have no idea how well he's doing. Have you watched any of him on his?
I've seen bits of him, but to be honest, I don't think he wants to stay. I wouldn't particularly keep him around. I couldn't see him getting much opportunity, so I'd sell him.
That's what I was thinking. Well, you can't loan him, because what is he? 23, I believe he is, isn't he?
You don't want to loan a player as well that's already been on loan like twice. He'll want to leave, so I'd just get rid of him. Yeah,
I mean, get whatever you can, because to be honest with you, like, you'll probably pick up like 5 million, maybe 10 million if you did a good negotiating. And he has, I mean, he is young. He's still about, is he 22, 23? So there is still age on his side. Yeah. And I don't think I think even from what I've seen, he's not been the worst. But I just don't think he'll cut it, because if you think about Saliba,
that's why. What's his name? Maslinta or something. He rates him a lot, and he wants to bring him back to Stuttgart. So I think he's been a good player for them this year. So I'd try and get money off them for him.
100%. And I think from what I've seen, I don't think he's a bad player, but I just don't think he'll get into the Arsenal setup, because if Saliba could have made, I know there was background, like, sort of circumstances that kept, Saliba out for this season. Whether you agree or don't agree, that's not, we'll kind of get onto that. But with Mavropanos, I think if Saliba can't get in, I just don't see him getting in, because I think Saliba is levels ahead. But obviously, I think we both kind of agree. It is sell or loan, but I would sell him first. Like, I'd try and sell him. If I can't sell him,
getting him out the way.
Yeah, and then I'd just loan him if everything just no one wanted to buy him. Obviously, moving on to the player that we've kind of touched upon, and that is Saliba. I know we want to keep him, but have you seen? Because I have watched a few games. I'm not going to say I watched every single game that Saliba's played, but I have watched maybe 2 or 3 games. And from what I've seen of him, I'm like, you know what? I agree with the loan move. And I know that's going to sound mad, and it's going to be bare mad country. Forget about what's happened. Let's leave his family situation to one side. I feel like having Gabriel and Saliba, both who have been out for 6 months or 8 months, kind of. I just don't think I think that would have been too big of a risk for Arteta to have 2 players who have been out of the game for nearly 6-7 months, who have not played a minute of football, to keep them both. I think what he could have done is loaned one of them out. Obviously, it was always going to be Saliba. till January. Had like a 6-month loan just to get him back into fitness. But also when you start to put his sort of background circumstances into it, I think for an 18, 19-year-old, it was the right thing to do. Because I look at it on a personal level. If I was 19 and I was away from my family, trying to make, because look, he has to make new friends. I'm not saying that the Arsenal club aren't welcoming or the players aren't welcoming, but he still has to kind of find out who can hang out with, because not everyone's the same. You might like them all, but you'll only go out with certain people or talk to people on a deeper level with certain people. And I think that was the right thing to do. But I would 100% keep him this year. I wouldn't even loan him. I'd keep him and bring him into the first team setup from what I've personally seen of him.
Yeah, I agree with you, to be honest. I think the loan move was, in the end, probably the right thing to do. But I mean, the way it was handled, everything, like leaving them out of match day squads, like on Europa League games where they weren't important, like Dundalk, not giving him those type of minutes, I think was irresponsible by Arteta. But I mean, yeah, he had the loans. He had a loan spell this season. I thought he was all right. I would keep him 100%. Would I start him in Premier League? Probably not. I'd give him minutes in the cup games, drip feed him this sort of experience. But I mean, the problem is, like, I would keep him because the thing is now with Luis leaving, it would mean we have to go out there and buy a right-sided centre back, which just adds another, target out into our already, big shopping list or whatever we have of players. So, but I'd definitely keep him.
Yeah, because I do think he'll become sort of second choice to whoever we buy, because I do think we are going to buy a right-sided centre back. We're going to have to, I think, because if he flipping keeps holding as a first choice, I swear to God, I'm already done with this. We can sign whoever we want. I'm done with this because that centre back pairing, right, just doesn't work for me. And then that's why I'm a bit like, well, we need someone, even though Saliba is here and Saliba can be good enough, but I just wouldn't want to rely on him being, them two being as young as they are. Because let's look at Fofana. Fofana's had, for me, a decent season. I don't think overall, I think he's had a good season for his first season in the Premier League, being 19. But he's made mistakes. So you don't want to be sat there, right, when he's making mistake after mistake and having no one else to play. Or then bringing in someone who's going to make just as many mistakes. So that's my issue. Because with Gabriel, I think we know what we're going to get from him. And I think starting Gabriel, I think most to all of this fan base are probably going to be somewhat happy. But with Saliba, it's a bit of a, we'll see. But I'm not going to slate him because, look, it's his first season in the Premier League. I think I can always give a season to a player. But I think once they get that first season and they're not looking to improve in the second and third, that's when I have a real big problem with them. But obviously, Saliba, we're both keeping. I don't even know. All right, I'm going to leave this one to the end because I think it's going to get a bit heated. I think we're going to agree, but it'll be a heated conversation. Pablo Marie.
For me, I'm not his biggest fan, but I'd just keep him because he's a good backup left-sided centre back. I think as long as he's not starting, I'm happy. I'd say if we get Conference League, give him those minutes. Let him and Saliba play together in that competition. I'd keep him because I think there's not many, like, left-sided centre backs are hard, and it's not like he's been an expensive signing. We got him for like 4 million, something like that, 6 million. So, and he's had some bad performances, but he's been solid enough for me to want to keep him at the club.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not, because I do think he will be second choice to Gabriel, which is, for me, I like that because it's experience. It's someone who, to be fair, every time I've seen him, he's shown somewhat of leadership. But it's not a great amount. It's not like, oh my God, he can command a whole team, but it's been good enough, especially with Gabriel. He seemed calmer under Marie and obviously when he has Louise. But it's only when Gabriel and Holding play together, that's when I have a concern. But even in that three-back they played against Chelsea, if it was Holding, Marie and Gabriel, like, they all looked really good because they had, obviously, Marie not holding their hands, but really kind of being that vocal point. And for that very reason, for a backup, I would keep him similar to like Louise in a sense of I'd keep him in the playing squad because I think he's not had that many injuries to take him completely out the team, but I would want him as a player coach in a sense, but be a part of the setup. So that's kind of what role I would give him, but I wouldn't give him that coaching role like we have with Louise.
Yeah,
Obviously, GK is obviously kind of agreeing with us, but he's saying he would loan Saliba out because of the mistake he's made, which is fair enough. And like, I don't look, I'm just against a second time loan move for a player I want as part of the sort of first team setup, whether he's a second choice or a first choice. Yeah, I do like Murray. I just don't know whether I just want to keep him for the long term. I'll keep him for a few seasons just because I feel like there's bigger priorities within this squad than selling
yeah.
Murray to replace him. That's the only reason why I'd keep him.
The good thing with Mahrez as well is, he's going to be 28 this year, so it's not exactly like he's mega old for a centre back.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
still got at least like maybe 3-4 years left in him. So as a backup left-sided centre half, he's a solid option, and he's really helpful, especially if you want to play a back three because he can do that kind of central role. So I mean, yeah, for sure, keeping him would be a smart choice.
Right, okay, let's get a little bit ragey now. I already know the answer, but I still have to ask you, Rob Holding.
Sell 100%. I think. I don't know what he's good at, to be honest. I mean, he's got a bit of physicality, and he talks a lot. But apart from that, I'm not too sure what his strengths are. I can't say I rate him at all. Yeah, I'd sell him. I think we can get maybe tops 15 million for him, if we're being like super generous. But yeah, just get him gone. Honestly, I'd get him gone and use the funds from him to get a right-sided centre back in, because I mean he's not what you need, because considering Luis is going and Saliba's not ready yet, you have Gabriel who he doesn't work well with. I'd get him gone.
Right, okay, JK's got an interesting. Not, I don't think this is about Holding. I think this is more to do with Saliba. But he said I'd loan him back out due to the start games. He needs that experience rather than riding on the bench. My point, I think we undervalue the power of loaning players. I get the point, but I just think loaning them out too many times also is a detriment to them because they'll be playing a little bit too many systems, and what we need them to do is play the system we want. Now, the thing is, yeah, with certain players, right, I'm going to make a point. If Brentford come into the Premier League, I wouldn't mind loaning them out to them, but because Brentford play a system which I feel Arteta is trying to emulate at the club. But I do like loans, but I just think there comes a certain point where I'm not loaning a 22-year-old, 21-year-old. I think at that point you either look to sell them or you really consider whether they're going to be a part of your first team, especially with centre backs and like outfield players, because they're only going to play till about, in the Premier League, if you're going to get really good quality out of them, till about the age of 29 to 32. And you really want to be able to build those partnerships. Chelsea loaned out Lukaku, Salah, KDB, and they came good that their loan. I get what you're saying if they had loaned them out, but that's the question. They could have, or they could have come back worse. So it's always going to be an iffy topic. But in terms of me with the Rob Holding, you said physicality. I don't even see that, to be honest, because if you're letting Sterling and Jota score headers whilst you're just watching them, I'm questioning what are you doing as a centre back, because you shouldn't be letting players that small score a free header. Not even like, oh, you tried to challenge them, but it just didn't pull off or something.
Yeah.
You just didn't. You didn't even attempt. And this is the problem with him. Like when it comes to aerial duels, he doesn't have it. For me, he seems to be getting. He has some good games in him, but I feel like some isn't good enough for me. I think that's where your mid tables and your sort of lower table teams are gonna be for. And I think, like you said, we can easily get 10, at a push 15 million, for him. Because even Newcastle were interested. I don't know whether they'll still be, but for me, I would sell.
100%.
That is no, we've got a set medley. Obviously, that's the last one of the defenders. I believe. I don't think they're. Yeah. Oh no, we've got one more, but I'll get on to him in a minute. That's the centre backs pretty much done. But obviously we've got
Yeah.
Zach Medley. What would you do with him, considering I think he's 20, turning 21 this season? So
I'd
what would you do?
I'd just let him go. It's obvious he's never going to be good enough for this club. I mean, his loans have always been at League Two, maybe League One clubs. I think even then he's been struggling. You know, I think he's a very average centre half. I just get rid of him, to be honest.
No, I kind of agree. I think at this point, if he's not even being considered in the plans, it's probably time to cut your losses, because I feel like we get too sentimental, and loaning him out again. For me, if the loan is right, as in if it's a really good setup like a
Mm.
Brentford or a Norwich, then I don't mind that being a loan move. But for me, I think we should try to sell first and then try to
Yeah,
loan him. So that I kind of do agree with. Now, this is obviously where I think there's going to be a lot of agreements, but these are now the fullbacks of the squad. So what we'll do, let's do the easy one first, just to get him out of the way, because I don't think there's a lot we can say about him, and that is Kieran Tierney.
keep 100%. I'd give him captaincy next season as well. The man deserves it. He's been absolutely quality this season and last season as well. You know, I think
Do you not think he's more suited for a vice captain just because of his injuries, or do you think I'd still give him just a captaincy?
I'd still give him. I think he's a natural born leader. You know, he's very vocal on the pitch. He loves to motivate the boys, and I think, you know, he's the type of leader the type of captain we need, because he'll actually, you know, sadly I love the guy, but Aubameyang, he's just not built for captaincy. So for me, keep, and you know, if you really want to show him your appreciation, give him the captaincy.
Yeah, obviously, guys, there's people coming into the YouTube one, so do drop a like and obviously comment what you think so far of this tier list and what you would do. Obviously, talking about the players that we are giving your opinions on them. I mean, the Tierney one, obviously, I know this, all the comments are going to be keeping him, and obviously with me as well, I'm keeping him. He's on the back of this shirt, and I bought this specially for him, so. Obviously, I'm keeping Captain Fantastic, man. I'm keeping my guy Tierney. I just think without him, this season would have been even worse. You know, him and Smith Rowe are the reason, not the sole reasons, but a major part of. Because look, I know people are going to say, "Oh, what about Saka? Or what about this?" But for me, with the introduction of when Smith Rowe became fit, and obviously Tierney playing consistent games, is when we actually looked good.
Yeah.
So for me, it's always been them two. Has been the ones where I can't sell them two at the moment, just because I think they're too vital. Now it's going to be somewhat questionable, because I think we may or may disagree. But I think, knowing me and Luke, we do agree with a lot of what we say. But even on that, I think the next one, which is, I think it's an obvious answer, but I'm intrigued to see what you say, and that is Callum Chambers.
Um, I'd keep him. I think he's a brilliant player. I think he's, you know, deceptively good going forward. I think, you know, everyone sees a big like a tall, strong fullback, and they don't see him being able to whip these crosses in. But against Palace, you know, not even just Palace, but just in general, I think he's a big threat going forward. I'd for sure keep him. The only issue is, you know, you've got players like Cedric, who I know we'll get into, but you know, it does pose a question. You know, we've got one fullback going out, and we're obviously going to replace him. So but I mean, for me, I'd keep Chambers. Because not only is he a good backup right back, um, he can play centre back if you need him to. He can play in the CDM role, so he's versatile, and he's just a good player all round. So I'd for sure keep him.
I think GK saying similar things. He likes Chambers. His injuries just get in his way. He can't get consistent run of games in the past. No, that's very fair. For me, I actually keep him just for a backup, but I think he's a superb backup, because let's be honest, right? Backup players are needed. Certain players want to play every single game. You can't have two absolutely worldies in the team. You can in certain setups, like I know City have loads of players who are willing to kind of rotate and etc. But I feel like in the position we're in, having someone like Callum Chambers, who, to be honest, like you said, he is deceptively good going forward. All right, I think we've got someone who's just joined us. Seb asking, why is Leno in the sell category? I'll explain my reasons first, and then I'll get Luke to explain his. They are very similar. The reason why we'd sell Leno is because of the system that's trying to be played. It's a play out the back, and also from my point of view, a lot of the top managers require a level. Like, I'm not saying it needs to be, Pirlo-esque, playing out of the back, but it needs to be a decent level of confidence playing in the back and making those decisions to help us get out of a press. And for me personally, I just haven't seen enough from Leno. The only thing he's good at is shot stopping, and that's the only compliment I can give him. And that, for me, in today's day and age, is just not enough. He's not commanding of his box, in my opinion. He's not. His playing out of the back is questionable. His decision making is questionable. And I just don't think he leads from the back. And that, for me, is just an issue I have with him. And I think that's what we need, because it's not me bringing Martinez up because just for the sake of it. It's more bringing him up because he showed us what Leno lacked, and he showed us what this team really needed. And that was a commanding goalkeeper more than anything. And that's the reason why I personally would sell him. Not because of Martinez, by the way, but just because there's flaws in his game that are too overwhelming. But that's the reason I put him in the sell category, and obviously Luke can explain his side.
Yeah, for me, just lacks distribution, lacks the ability with the ball at his feet. Yeah, he's not commanding enough, to be honest. I think this season he's showed his weaknesses, glaringly. They've been very obvious. You could see his weaknesses from a mile away. And I think there's younger, cheaper alternatives out there that are better than him. Sadly, is the case with Leno. I think, he's obviously a good goalkeeper, but, he's not a keeper you can. If we get a keeper in, he's not exactly like a good choice to have as backup, because he's not going to want to play backup. So get money in and just get a better keeper.
I'm not going to lie, I think he would go for decent sums of money as well, to be fair. But obviously we've got HJ90 in the building, thinking it's FIFA. It kind of is in a way. Obviously it's not the format of it, but it is in a way just us being managers really and rebuilding the squad. And obviously Seb kind of is now understanding why he's in the sell category, which is good. But I mean, obviously, if you disagree, let us know why. I would love to know. And obviously, I will go back through the comments and bring them back up. But obviously, we were talking about Kieran Tate. We'll talk about Callum Chambers. And obviously, I think we're both wanting to keep him but as a backup. Yeah. Let's see. All right, I'll go for another obvious one, and that is Hector Bellerin. Now, this isn't what the club are doing, which we know they're looking to basically sell him. I know he wants to leave, but what would you actually do if you're in a situation where you had the choice of keeping him and selling him?
Sell him, get rid. I think as well as he's been a servant for us, his lack of ability shows. I think. The only thing he really had going for him was he was quite physical and he was quick. But I think ever since his injury, he's come back. He hasn't got the pace, and he's not too physical anymore. I think he's inept going forward. He's not the best defensively. He lets his man get in behind him way too often. And I think for a player of his ability, you can get a decent amount of money for him. There are offers of apparently 25 million that are being circulated to be made. So. I think it seems very likely that he will leave Arsenal this summer. So for me, I'd sell him and I'd get a better player in.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree. I think look, this is very unfortunate because I do think Hector Bellerin was a good player. I think there were. I know people are going to say, "Oh, yeah, is that because of pace?" And that's what my question of Tariq Lamptey has always been this season. And I've said I actually don't know whether I want Tariq Lamptey because of the same reason. Once they lose that pace, are they going to be as good as they are? Because Bellerin was always a recovery player. Once that sort of element of his game went, he hasn't looked the same. He's not been able to beat players. I don't know whether it's a psychological thing with him, whether he's just scared to take on a player because he might do his ACL again. But unfortunately, we just don't have the time to nurture players to become who they were. I think he's getting on in age, and I think with the price tags that are being mentioned in sense of anywhere from 25 to 35 million pounds being touted around with PSG potential. Barcelona's out of the question just because we know they have money problems. They're going to be looking at the free market at the moment, but there are clubs after him, and I think this is the time where we start becoming ruthless FC rather than sentimental, and I actually would sell him. So that obviously leaves us with our, I'm just thinking, our final defender in the squad, which is Cedric.
Yeah. See, this is where it gets tricky for me, because I feel like if we're getting rid of Bellerin and we're bringing in another right back and you have Chambers to play back up, you kind of want to get rid of Cedric. I like Cedric a lot. I think he's a decent player. But for me, if we're keeping Chambers, you got to get rid of Cedric. I think he's not going to want to sit there and play third choice as a right back. He's going to want to try and get out there and get minutes and try, stake a claim for the next port. I know he's not in the Euro squad, but maybe try and stake a claim for the World Cup squad, which is literally next year. So I think, sadly, I'd sell him, but it's not the same as it is for Bellerin or Holding. I just sell him purely because it would be best for him.
100%. Obviously, we've got Seb saying about Bellerin. I just missed a comment as I was talking about Cedric. He said he's lost his pace. Obviously, never likes to attack down the line. And that's the other thing as well. I think his attacking runs have been a problem. He runs like an inside forward.
Yeah.
Rather than like an inverted fullback. And that's, for me, the problem that's always been. That's why Cedric looks better than him. That's why Chambers has looked better going forward.
Yeah.
Not because they are better, but it's just because of how they position themselves. They help the inside forwards and create space for them. Obviously, we've got Talking Barca. Big up yourself, mate. How you doing? And obviously, GK saying Cedric, I'd sell. So there are people thinking the same. And I think for the very reasons that you said, Luke, I think I do agree as well. I think just solely down to we are looking to obviously bring in the likes of Max Aarons or Tariq Lamptey. And there's probably other names touting around as well, but they're the major two links that we've got. And if we're bringing them in, keeping Chambers as a backup, I think for the betterment of Cedric, because I don't think Cedric would want to be a third choice, and I don't think Chambers would want to be a third choice. It's just a matter of, out of the two, who would we keep? And for me, just for the pure reasons of, Chambers just being a little bit more versatile, if we wanted to turn it into sort of a back four or a back five and then play him as a CDM, we can do. And that's the reason. I just think Cedric is a right back, and that's it. Whereas with Chambers has a little bit more to offer in that sense. And that's the only reason I think for me. I know it's not about keeping too many versatile players, but he has got key attributes to play in different positions. Obviously, GK saying Cedric's crossing, those quality, and his passing is shaky and built. You're not wrong, actually. Yeah, I like his crossing. I think his build-up play is somewhat questionable at times, but that's most of the squad, to be fair. Big up Talking Barca, man. Hope you're doing well there. Cedric should have been given more opportunities this season. Arteta is consistently trying to avoid playing him. I do agree. I do agree with that. Does he? I think he does deserve more playing time, but I think when Chambers came back, I thought I'd rather Chambers play. And I know that sounds a bit mad, but I just think with Chambers, he is a little bit more solid in terms of defensively than any of the right backs we've got. But he's been surprisingly very well going forward. So I think that's why I've not kicked up a fuss about it, because if Chambers was shit, I would have been like, you know what, why isn't Cedric playing? But what are your thoughts on that? Like, if Cedric or Chambers should have been playing more?
I think, regardless, before Chambers was back, to be honest, I still believe that's when Cedric should have been getting more game time, because it was very blatant that Bellerin and Pepe as a wing pairing just don't work, because Bellerin refuses to make an overlap. And when we saw, I think the one game that we saw Cedric and Pepe play together, we won 3-1 against Leicester away, and Pepe had an absolute blinder because he had an overlapping fullback. But for me, I haven't been too vocal about it, because we've had the choice of Chambers there, and he's been absolutely brilliant for me. So regardless of how I rate Cedric, it's just for me, it makes more sense to sell him because we'd probably get more money for him than we would for Chambers.
No, 100%. I think Seb has converted. No, I mean, yeah, it's obviously Chambers has been good when he's come on to play right back. To be fair, it is a tough one, and I think with them two, it's whoever you prefer. I think that is. I wouldn't disagree if you put Cedric and Keep and Chambers as sell, because I actually don't mind either. To be honest, whoever stays and whoever goes, but I think one of them inevitably will be going just because they who out of them two, I think their ambitions are going to be at least second choice at the worst. Um, but obviously that does conclude our defenders, I believe. So what we'll do is we'll move into sort of the defensive midfielders that we have at the club, and obviously the central midfielders. Let's start off with an obvious one, and then we'll go to a tricky one, and then we'll go. And I'll start off with Mohamed Al Neni. What would you do with him?
I'm not sure what your stance on this is, but for me, I'd keep him because it's not like we're going to get a good sum of money for him. And as a backup, he knows his role, and he's a very helpful player to have around because his energy is matched by very few at the club. I think, you bring him, not even bringing him on. I remember the United game, the away win 1-0. He was 90 minutes and he played the whole game and he was still chasing balls up the pitch relentlessly. Yeah. And for me, he's the type of player that, when in the Villarreal home leg, we should have played him instead of that risky midfield three of Partey and then the 2 8s. For me, El Neni and Partey would have done the job because we were getting overrun in midfield, and El Neni kind of sits in. And yeah, he makes backwards passes or sideways passes, but he keeps the ball because he wants to, help his team kind of have control of the ball in a sense. So for me, I'd keep El Neni.
No, 100%. Obviously, even GK here saying he would keep him as well. Means didn't spend much on him if he's decent. If a decent offer come in, so I'd put him in keep but sell at the right. Yeah, we forgot about that category. Yeah, that's a category personally I would put him in because, like you said, I think his energy is really good. I think because he offers something which none of our players do, which is an engine in midfield, someone who's willing to just close down the gaps and make it very hard for oppositions to be able to do anything. And in certain games, you do need that. But if like a ridiculous offer came in somewhere where I'm like, oh mate, like we kind of can't refuse that, I would actually sell him. Would you change your stance on keep but sell at the right price, or do you think no, keep him at all costs?
I'd keep but sell at the right price, but
what would that price be? What would the minimum price be? Like you think, all right, at that point, yeah, we've got to get rid.
Excess of like 12 million.
Oh wow, okay, that's a lot lower than I was thinking. To be fair, but because I was thinking more about 25 million.
I rate El Neni as a squad player, to be honest. The good thing is with El Neni, it's not like he's going to complain about being a squad player because he's happy as in that role.
Yeah, no. Seb is saying keep, not a bad backup. His stamina is, and then obviously, he's agreeing with us in the sense of 15-ish million. You'd kind of just sit there and say, okay, maybe it's time to sell him. That's what I think we both agree and keep, but sell at the right price because he is one of those players I would keep him, but not at all costs. Whereas with I think some of the key players that we've got, I actually would keep them, like even if a good offer came in, but yeah, I think that's the first one to get into there just because I think he's going to be like a third choice, especially with once we get into the transfer talk, we'll find out why. But moving on to Arteta's love child, not really, he fucking hates the guy, I think, is Guendouzi. Don't forget, this is what you would do. Forget about what Arteta's mishap or anything like. This is what you would do knowing what's going on.
If I'm being honest, I'd put him in the same category as El Neni. I'd keep but sell at the right price because I think he's a young midfielder. I've seen there are some of his traits I've seen that I like. He's still got a lot of things to improve. Attitude for one. But for me, I'd whack it. I agree with GK, to be honest. I don't think he's ready enough, and for me, I'd put him in keep but sell at the right price.
No, I agree. Obviously, we got Albert in the chat. Obviously, what you saying, my brother? Obviously, we talk all the time, so yeah, I don't even need to ask really. And GK saying Guendouzi, I rate. Obviously, this is the one that you wrote, but he just doesn't think he's first choice already. Same category as L. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that because I don't think loaning him is the right move. I could understand it this season because of obviously what happened, and I think the problem is right that I have with the attitude side of things. I agree with Arteta on the stance is
Mm,
you do have to have somewhat of a good attitude. And he did get the opportunity to apologize with what he said. Look, I'm not really bothered by what he said. It's not what he said, it's just the way he acted around it, saying that,
yeah,
oh, I'm not going to come out and apologize. I don't, and I just think that's, for me, an attitude which I personally don't agree with.
I
And
dislike it. Yeah,
because we are a classic club, and I think we need to stay that way. And then look, I know it's a petty thing he said, and you kind of could just move on. But for a manager to come in, especially at Arsenal with all these egos, he does need to lay the sort of authority down, and he's done that really well. Loaned him out, given him an opportunity, and I think there's 50-50 reports, but I do agree. I think keep him, but if the right offer came in, I would 100% be the first to say, yeah, I think it's time to sell him. Moving on from him is one of the most controversial figures in Arsenal at the moment. But actually, I think even in history of Arsenal, really, I don't think there's a more sort of
yeah.
divided opinion on a player that I can't think of anyway, and that is Granit Xhaka.
Again, it's a tough one. I think I have started to rate him a little bit more over the last few weeks. Do you know what? I'm just gonna say keep. I think he's a good player. I think the problem is with Granit Xhaka is his temperament kind of costs him at times. I mean, I know there's talks of him wanting to leave, but I don't know. I'm stuck between keep, but sell at the right price because there will be offers coming for him, I believe. I think with the links around the club, with the options we're looking at, I'd say you want to kind of get rid of him because listen, people only think he's important to us because we don't have any other options really in centre midfield. Like, who else can we play there? Ceballos or El Neni? Well, that's not the best thing in the world. So
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me, I don't see him wanting to play backup either. So I mean, yeah, I guess I'd keep but sell at the right price.
Do you know what? I actually do kind of agree with that because, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, haven't you made it abundantly clear? To be honest with you, I don't think Shaq is as bad as people make him out to be. I don't think he's a good player. I just don't think he's as bad as people are saying. Um, it's a strange one because it's the same. Like, look, we can't really strip the entire club in one window. We have to be slightly realistic with how many players we can bring in because we can't offload loads of players like we have done. Look at what we did in the winter window. Look at what we did in the summer. We have offloaded a lot of players under the
Yeah,
Arteta regime, but the problem that we've had is we've done that a little bit too much to the point where we've not even got backup for some positions. So that's why it's a balancing act, and that's the only reason I'm going to say keep or sell at the right price. Because if we can get the right pricing for him, we can go get a replacement very easily for him. But
yeah,
that's the reason I'd say that is what I would do. I thought it'd be a lot more controversial but I am more tempted to sell him than I would to keep him. But
yeah,
it can't be never would he be a first choice. It has to be like second or third at best. He cannot be first choice. He can only come in because of an injury. And don't forget we got Conference League as well. Maybe I don't even give a shit really if we get it or not. The only thing I want to do is finish above Spurs, which means we get Conference League. But that's
yeah,
only because I do want to finish high. I'm not one of these people who's going to be, oh, if we finish there, then Arteta's done it. I don't give a shit. I want my team to do well. I couldn't care who's doing it. If Arteta's winning, couldn't care about Arteta because he's winning. It's like, look at Ollie, he's second. I don't understand the Ollie because you're winning games. You're in the second with but yeah, rather than getting a rant on him, obviously the GK saying Xhaka's decision-making and build-up lets him down, as well as mobility, but in my opinion, he'd make a decent squad player. I agree 100% with that.
Yeah.
Keep, in my opinion, for backup.
The problem
Not
with
the
Xhaka is he's inconsistent as well. He has good games
yeah,
and they'll have poor games, and I think you can't, like, inconsistency is something we want to wipe from the squad because, well, that's why we're mid-table. If you describe your season as inconsistent, most of the time it probably means you would have ended up fighting for like 7th to 11th. So I want to get rid of this inconsistency, and I know, there is a player I want to keep, Pepe, I would say now, but he is inconsistent. But I think he's getting better with stuff like that, and I think Xhaka, for me, I'd
he's had
keep
enough
him
time.
as a squad player, but it's just right now as a starter. If we want to go back to the top 4 and things like that, it's just it's just not it.
No, that's what I mean though, because like, look, we can't get rid of every single player, and
Exactly.
the one thing that Xhaka does offer, he's pretty much available whenever you need him to be. I know he's got injured now, but let's be real, like he's played, what was it, like 13 games in a row or something for us? Like, I know there was a whole month he played every single game in, and look, his availability. Look, I'm not saying that you rate a player because of their availability, but for a squad player, I do want them to be available when called
Yeah.
upon. That is something which Xhaka does have, and that's the reason I would keep him. But if we get the right price for him, we can replace him very easily. There's a lot of players who we can go and get, so that's the reason why I think we both agree we put him in there. And this is such an easy one, but I still have to ask, and that is Lucas Torreira.
So, because I think I'm pretty sure most people know his time at the club's done. I think it's actually a shame because in his first season, I was a big fan of Torreira. I got him on the back of the home kit that season. I think he was quality. He had like a 5-game run where he was man of the match for 5 games in a row. But sadly, Emery kind of destroyed his confidence by playing him as a 10, and then eventually, it didn't work for him under Arteta. So it looks like, he's had issues, obviously, family-wise. So I think he's going to want to leave. I have no problem with that because I love him and I just want to see him happy. So I want him to enjoy his football. And if that's not at Arsenal, then we have to just let him move on.
Yeah, because obviously I know it's sort of his sort of family / him as well, saying that he's really homesick and he wanted to. I mean, from the very beginning, it kind of just seemed like I think maybe it's the wrong time for him because he was even in the Emery, he was kind of saying he's homesick and that and I think once a player comes out and kind of says stuff like that, you kind of just have to get rid. Like there's no point of keeping a player who doesn't want to be here. So that is obviously what I think a lot of people are kind of saying, like GK said, sell Torreira or keep sell at the right price. It
Just keep
is a confusing one. It really is but I would, for me, priority is sell him. He's got the captaincy skills on the pitch, giving out instructions. Xhaka keeps out play. All right, so this is on Xhaka, I'm guessing. He said, yeah, but I feel like if we can bring someone like a Basuma in, you don't really need to be giving instructions to do like every 2 seconds anyway. So if the players are intelligent enough around them, then that sort of element of giving instructions kind of limits itself anyway.
I suppose the only thing is, if for a Xhaka replacement is you're going to want to find someone who has the tendency to understand the game of filling in at left back like Xhaka does. When Tierney goes bombing down that left-hand side, Xhaka tucks in nicely. So I suppose the only thing that you'd want to do is make sure, you get a player with the intelligence to know to do that. But I mean, apart from that, yeah, it's not exactly like a key thing to be giving out instructions. That's what most footballers do.
Yeah. Talking Barca with the question, obviously saying, would you want Laporta as a chairman? What I'll do with this question is I'll ask it at the end. So once we've done our club, we can say if we were to restructure Arsenal, who would we bring into those positions? So that I'll answer at the end whether that is someone I'd bring in. Obviously, Seb is actually agreeing for once without any sort of questions on it, and saying yes, he would sell Torreira as well. That moves us on to the other, obvious one. I think there's no real explanations needed, and that's Thomas Partey. I'd keep him. I'm not even going to lie. I know you are going to keep him as well.
Yeah, just keep him simple.
I think that is most. Yeah, that's all. No wait. Well, yeah, we've got. We'll now move on to the cams or the attacking-minded plays that we've got, and that we'll start off with. Actually, no, we'll start off because I want to keep that for a bit later. But I'll start off with ESR.
Keep, obviously. So that's
Croydon, De Bruyne, you're staying, lad. You're not going
Yeah.
anywhere. Do you know what? Joe Willock, I'm going to keep to the end. The reason being because I think there's going to be a lot of, and obviously,
There's
guys,
discussion
get
to be
your
had about him.
yeah, because what I want to do is get the people's opinion on this properly. So give me your proper opinions on what you would do with Joe Willock, because I actually want to read your comments whilst we're making our sort of suggestions in there. So I don't want to skip over it or accidentally miss that out. So get your comments in about Joe Willock. But what we'll do in the meantime is Afro Man moving to the MLS. You know, Willian is gone anyways, but you know, and I would sell him.
Get rid.
And
The only thing you can say about Willian signing is at least it was just a free signing. At least we didn't spend money on him.
Yeah, until you hear the wages. But yeah, no, I get what you mean. Let's go with a bit of a questionable one, and or it could be questionable, and that's Reece Nelson.
I'd loan him, to be honest. I wouldn't sell him because I think there is definitely a good player in Reece Nelson. He's still relatively young. He's 21. Give him a loan spell because a player of his ability would get a loan spell to a decent side as well. So let him have a loans experience out there. Let him get minutes, and next season, see what happens. But I mean, like the season after next, we'll see what happens. But for me, I'd loan him out because I think he's shown glimpses of his ability, and to have only as limited minutes as he's had this season, I think is a poor decision from Arteta.
No, 100%. I'm just going off of it, considering we may have the Conference League. I'm tempted to go more towards the keep just so we can play him in the Conference League. Like I said, my stance on that Conference League is I just don't give a shit. Like, play who you want. I really, just as long as you're not touching that first team 11 with Saka and Gabriel and, Martinelli's and etc., I couldn't give a crap who you're playing. So there isn't, but then that is very limited minutes. That is one competition which, we really want to play him in. So I do kind of agree with the stance of loaning him out, because just to play him in the Conference League, it's not enough minutes for me. And rather, because let's say, for example, Brentford get, because this is obviously hypotheticals with depending on what other teams do. If a Brentford come into the Premier League, I'd actually say to Brentford, hey, have him for a season. He'll help you stay up, and you don't need to worry about, finding replacements for who you have. So I think that would be a really strategical move, especially with Brentford, with the way they play football, can really develop Nelson into a baller. Like if you think about like Ivan Toney, if you think about Ollie Watkins, I think Reece Nelson could. I know they're strikers, but they've got this sort of attacking ability to train players to make the right decisions, and I feel like somewhere like a Brentford or a Norwich would really suit him, and it would really help him develop and get all the minutes he needs. Yeah. So I do kind of agree. If we can get the right loan move, that would probably be the best for him, but also for Arsenal.
Well, I 100%.
Obviously, let's see if we've got any. Seb kind of agrees with us here, saying, yeah, I agree with the lad. Loan Nelson, still young and needs Premier League experience.
I mean, I'd only really loan Nelson if it's to a Premier League team, because it doesn't make sense going letting him, or at least maybe a top flight league, like maybe a Bundesliga or something like that, because it doesn't make sense letting him go to the Championship. That would just spoil everything, to be honest. So yeah, I'd loan him, but only to a club like maybe like a Newcastle or a Southampton, something like that. He'd do bits for them. So
yeah, I mean, even if you look at outside of England, you can look at the likes of Sevilla. Could do really well because they play that sort of system. Villarreal under Emery, he could be really good. Obviously learning off of like Chukwueze and Moreno and being in part of that sort of front three. And then there will be clubs who he can suit, other than obviously in the Premier League. But look, if you look into who's coming into the Premier League, like Brentford or Norwich, Southampton, even Villa, because obviously there is question on whether Grealish will actually stay. So, I mean, if Grealish does leave, let's say, I'm not saying to us, by the way, I'm just saying if he generally leaves, they'll have that void. And if we go in and say, look, you can have him for a season-long loan until you find a proper replacement, that could really help him out. But obviously, then we'll move on to another. I think that some of these are going to be really obvious what we want to do, and that's going to be the wonder kid, Bukayo Saka.
Keep 100%.
Let's go for another obvious one, the Brazilian wonder kid, Gabi Martinelli.
Keep for sure.
And one thing I do want to say right to this fan base, and this isn't me digging people out, but think about where Martinelli's come from. He came from, I think it was the second or third division of the Brazilian Football League.
I think it was the fourth Brazilian division.
Yeah, it was really low. And we overlook players within the championship. There's people questioning the Basu, like if Basumo's to sign. And I just want you to not to forget that Gabi Martinelli came even worse, in the Brazilian setup than half of the players were looking to get in. So I just want people to think about that. Obviously, let's go to quite an obvious one because I want to sell this player personally, and that is Eddie Nketiah.
Oh, I agree. Sell him. I don't think he's ever going to be good enough. I'm not sure what he's doing to be getting ahead of my man Balogun, but it is what it is. Arteta makes silly decisions sometimes, and I just get rid of them, to be honest.
I don't even know. I don't know whether it's sentiment or something because other than that, I can't really think of why you'd want to play Nketiah because, unless or probably we did the watch-alongs for England, and I can't remember one thing he did. I genuinely couldn't tell you one thing he did good or even bad because he just doesn't want to get on the ball. But obviously, that moves us on nicely to Balogun. I'm 100% keeping this kid.
Keep.
Would you take a loan? I'm just asking the question here.
That's what I was tempted to maybe loan him because I don't like the only thing is I feel like we're gonna sell Lacazette, and if we sell Lacazette, you can keep. I would almost keep Aubameyang as a starter and then have Balogun play backup because that would make the most sense to me. So I mean, for me, I'd just say keep.
Yeah, I just think having him in the choice, especially to play Conference League, Carabao Cup, and the FA Cup, there's enough minutes now. Obviously, when the season refreshes, there's enough playing time for him. Like group stages of he could play the entire Conference League for me. Obviously, the FA Cup at the beginning of the round, he can definitely play that. Obviously, the more we get into the competition, depending on obviously how he performs, we could be pulling him out. But then he's got the Carabao Cup to play as well. So there will be minutes for him now, especially when we look at a fresh season with the amount of competition we could be playing in. Even if we don't have the Conference League, the beginning of the FA Cup, the beginning of the Carabao Cup, and no disrespect, obviously, but the lower teams in the Premier League, he could be getting minutes in them to give the likes of Aubameyang or if Lacazette, depending on what we do with these players, to give them a rest and be a rotational player. So obviously, that kind of moves us on to Aubameyang.
Yeah, keep. I think he's had a bad season, but it's not worth selling him for me. I think he's got a new deal last summer. I think he's a very important player to the squad. So yeah, keep him.
Now, this is the sort of this could be either way depending on how you look at it, but that is Lacazette.
I'd sell him personally. No, he's never really, for the price tag we paid for him, and he's never hit 15 Premier League goals in a season. That's really poor. I think there's clubs out there that will be willing to pay money for him, and there's, if we sell him, there's better players out there. So for me, I'd just get rid of him.
Yeah, for me, it's just the wrong player, wrong system, really, because as much as he does well for us, I feel like we miss that goal scorer. And unfortunately, as good as he is at pressing players down, his hold-up play and everything, unfortunately, we just don't have the wingers to really get those goals. Oh, well, we haven't had them this season anyway. I know Pepe's kind of stepped up, but for me, Lacazette has got... It is a very unfortunate one, but I think it's time to sell him and just be ruthless because Aubameyang has got the new deal. He's going to be a lot harder to sell just because of the profile of player he is, whereas Lacazette will be a lot easier and we'll probably get that 30, 35 million pound price tag. And then what we can go and do is we'll get into it in later, but obviously go and get a striker for a lot less, which I have a few suggestions for. Obviously, Nicola Pepe, the one who is getting a lot of plaudits right now, but at the beginning of the season and in the middle of the season, he is actually one of those players who was people were questioning. For me, I would 100% keep him. I think he's shown enough to the end of the season, and if he can get a consistent run next season, I think he will come good for us. It's just it's been unfortunate where he's been in and out of the squad. What are your thoughts on Nicola Pepe there?
My thoughts are same with yours. Keep him. I think I'm a massive fan of Pepe. I think he's a very good footballer. I think this season especially he's worked very much so on his, output in terms of goals and creative, output towards the team.
Isn't it like 22 goals and assists this season or something like that?
He's got something like he's got 20 goals and assists, like 20 GA this season, and I think he's starting to really become that player we've all expected for him to come. Ever since his red card at Leeds, he's bounced back incredibly, and I think he's been really staking a claim to get that starting spot week in, week out, and I think it's hard to drop him at the moment, so it's keep 100%.
Yeah, I mean, even GK saying he's finding it quite a difficult one. By saying Pepe keep was at the right price. Never wanted him. I don't know. I think he's a good player, but just bought him at the wrong time. I think there was a lot more priorities at the time we bought him, especially with that £72 million price tag. I think there was a lot more that the squad needed than just a winger. So I kind of do understand where that comes from.
Yeah.
Obviously, earlier he's saying even more reasons to prove that the league doesn't matter. Being Martinelli from the fourth division, you get to shine regardless of the league, 100%. He's saying, look at Oliver Skip for Norwich. Yeah, he's having a decent season, I think. The league is a bit overstated. And then obviously we've got the Assemble. Obviously, good evening to you too. And this is where I'm going to try and find the comment because I know someone, GK's comment here, which moves us on to the player of Willock. Willock I'd cash in on. I just don't rate him technically. If he develops that later on, maybe it's safe to put in a buyback clause. What are your thoughts on Willock?
I think GK said it perfectly for me there. I'd cash in on him. I think, I think this loan may be a bit of a false image for me. I think we could get a good price for him because of the loan, but for me, I've never really seen him. I think he's a good player, don't get me wrong, but technically he's not the best. So I'd sell him, but yeah, a buyback clause would be an intelligent thing to do.
Yeah, 100%. I think I don't think he's even in the loan. Look, he's been brilliant, but it is Newcastle. Let's be real. Let's not. I think in a setup that Arsenal need to compete, he just doesn't fit that system. And this isn't me saying that he suits simple. But he does though. He suits simple football. And unfortunately, if you want to be a Premier League sort of challenging side, you've got to be tactically aware and you've got to be technically aware as well of how to play football sort of tech. I know it sounds very sort of nitpicky, but it is the sort of little things that you do that make a huge difference in these teams. Like look at the City side, look at the Liverpool side. All of those players are very sort of particular in the way they do things. They're very tactically aware as well. And I just don't know whether he's suited for a challenging side or whether he'll always be that sort of mid-table club kind of player. Obviously, Seb saying 6 goals in 6 games, yes, but like I said, that's in a system which is very simple to play football in. And this is not me discrediting him. I just don't think he's made for a challenging side. That's just my personal opinion. I think if we want to move into that sort of realm, he might be the one to cash in now because look at Iwobi. If we didn't sell him for 40 million, now look at him. Willock could be another one of them where the price might be too good to say no to. Especially with the 25 to 30 million being mentioned. The opinionated Gooner saying Willock needs to leave to benefit his own. I agree with that as well. He's improved a lot. He has improved, but this is what I mean. Like, it's so difficult, but I just feel like the offers that are coming in for it, oh well, the subjective valuation that's there for him, I have to sell him. Not I can't turn down 25 to 30 million pounds for Willock. I just can't do it because I don't think he's that good. I think he is a decent player. There's a decent player there, but is he good enough to challenge? That's my problem with him.
Yeah,
Um,
I think, yeah, he's improved, but I still just think he's not like the level required yet for me.
GK, wait, you say Willock has always had a goal threat, though. I think most of us knew that when Emery bought him. Yeah, 100%. I don't think he's doing anything we didn't expect him to do. Who would you bring in as a box role next? We're gonna get into that after this one. Willock is like a Ramsey, a runner, and a workhorse. Yeah, but Ramsey was a bit more technical in my opinion. I think he had a bit more to his game than just being, an engine in midfield. But I do understand what you're saying.
I mean,
What
that's
would you
the
do?
reason
So would you
when
put him in sell or would you say keep or sell at the right price?
keep us at the right
Yeah.
price.
So obviously that kind of concludes the tier list. Obviously, if you do, I'll keep it up whilst we talk about our decisions in terms of transfers. We'll talk about the ones that are kind of rumored to be sort of somewhat true and reputable, and then we'll also talk about players who we would like to bring in. So this can be anyone really. Realistic, obviously, we'll try and be as realistic as possible, or we can give a reason to why we think it's a realistic option to bring them in. Obviously, the assembles had his thoughts on Willock lacks the physicality needed to be a top player at Arsenal, in my opinion. That's what I mean. There's parts of his game which I just don't think, that he does lack in. Yeah, I'd give Ramsey technically was decent. Yeah, that's what I mean. That there was more to Ramsey than just being a workhorse, in my opinion. But let's go to transfer number one. From the rumors I'm hearing, this is basically a done deal. They're just waiting for the window to open, and it looks like everything is aligned. And that is Guna Basuma. What do you think of that one, Luke? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Do you actually think it'll happen, or do you think it's one of those where maybe the media just hyping it up? Because I am actually hearing in the pipelines it's fairly done.
Um, I'll be very happy if it's a done deal. I think he's a quality player. I think him and Partey would work very well together. If it is done, then that's very fair play to Arsenal for getting a signing, wrapped up this quickly and this efficiently. But if not, it's a lot of media gas for nothing as expected. That's very typical of Arsenal. I think
GK, just before Luke, write down why you would want Basuma because I'm actually really intrigued to why you wouldn't. But yeah, continue, Luke.
But yeah, I think he's a good player. I think he's a good option as well. I mean, listen, for the funds available, well, not for the funds, but for the willingness to spend of Arsenal, I think it makes sense, like financially, because he's not going to be an expensive signing for the options that are out there. I mean, there's a lot of the thing is, there's a lot of midfielders out there that we're linked with that, like Alwar, Camavinga, Basuma. Apparently, we're even linked with Zakaria as a swap deal with Xhaka, which I would definitely take. So I think
Well, okay. I actually did not know that one. I'm not gonna lie, I've not
there's
seen
been
that
a few
one.
links about it, but I mean, listen, I'd be happy with Basuma. So if it happens, then that's a
So
bonus.
who would your priority one be then? Like say from the names that you mentioned, like who would you actually want to bring in for that sort of partner? Who would like let's say money was no option. Let's say we were one of those that would splash the cash. Who would you actually want to bring in?
The thing is, for me, is like what type of midfielder, like, because Partey is kind of a box to box in that sense. He's not a CDM. Everyone knows that. So for me, I'd want to kind of bring in a midfielder that's just like a defensive midfielder. I'd quite like. I quite like Zakaria because he's obviously the defensive midfielder that all Arsenal, like not all Arsenal, but he's a defensive midfielder. He's up. But my honest answer would probably have to be, I don't know, Camavinga or Locatelli from Sassuolo. I think he's a fantastic player, and he's a young defensive midfielder. So between Camavinga and Locatelli, to be honest.
All right, so what we'll do is let's go through our sort of realistic starting 11 for next season, considering the players we've kept. Obviously, I know some of them are going to be bench players, so we can kind of look at them as. But I'm going to ask you. So, in terms of even if they're in the club right now, so it could be like a Matt Ryan or even a Leno, even if we said we'd sell them, but let's look at this sort of starting 11 because I know it's going to be a 4-2-3-1. Is that the sort of system you'd play, or do you think that needs to change?
I'd stick with that system, to be honest. It doesn't make it. It seems
it can change in game, can't it? So it's not too big of a deal, I think.
Yeah, I suppose it. To be honest, it suits us a lot. To be fair, I think there is the option of the 3-4-3 when we're playing bigger teams, but yeah, for now, I'd just stick with the 4-2-3-1.
So in goal, who would you go for? Obviously, being let's try and make this 11 as realistic as possible in terms of how much we can actually get rid of and how much we can bring in. Because for me, my goalkeeper would be Onana personally, because I think if we were to, let's say, sell Leno, we could easily get about anywhere from 25 to 30 million for him. And Onana would cost around 10 million. Let's just go for the highest amount that they're asking for, 10 million. Now, we'll still have 20 million to improve the rest of the squad as well. And Onana is that profile of player that Arteta would want in a goalkeeper. So what would your goalkeeper be?
My goalkeeper would also have to be Onana, to be honest. He's a cheap option who'll be available. It's just whether his appeal comes through and he's allowed to play is the only issue.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I hope we'll go with, obviously, let's say the appeal does go through, because I feel like that's probably the easiest way. Otherwise, we get so nitty-gritty with everything.
Yeah.
Right back. So this is obviously who you'd like. Obviously, it doesn't mean if we're linked to them, but it's got to just be like a realistic-ish option. But it doesn't have to be a Tariq Lamptey or Aaron's. Or is there someone else in that sort of price bracket that you've seen that you like?
Yeah, there's two options for me: Max Aarons and Emerson. The problem with Emerson is I think Barcelona own him partly, so I think it'll be a hard signing to get. So for me, I'd just go with Max Aarons.
Yeah, he's loaned out by Barca to Real Betis. But let's say, for example, he could come in. But I know I can't even remember who it is. But I know a La Liga side have basically gone in for him, and we might be a bit too late. To get the signing done. But for me, I've always wanted Max Aarons, to be honest. So was it Aarons that you said as well?
Yeah.
And then centre-back pairings. Like I said, I know we've kept a lot of them, but this could be like you could be putting one in and then signing one, or it could be that you, from the keep list, that you actually want to put both of them in. This could be a bit of both if you...
All right, left centre-back, I want to put Gabriel, obviously. Right centre-back's a tricky one for me because I feel like we're obviously going to need to sign someone. It's just the question is who. I suppose I know we're looking at tossing Alderweireld and Anderson. I think Anderson would be a good shout, to be fair. But
yeah, the Fulham centre back, isn't he?
Yeah, we're not really linked with too many, top centre backs. So,
but like I said, it's just got to be a real. What about? Do you think Ben White would be a realistic option?
Well, speaking of Brighton centre backs, my choice when me and my friends did a lineup thing a while back, and I actually went for Lewis Dunk. I think he's I think he's a good defender. I think he's 29, so he can offer experience to Saliba, kind of teach him a thing or two. And he's obviously a quality centre back, and he's got a few years left in him. But how expensive would he be is the only problem. So I guess, I mean, in all honesty, you could play Chambers as a centre back, to be fair, which would be another shout. But it's hard. The centre back's a really hard one for me because I'm not too sure.
For me, I think for me it was Ben White was the one I wanted to get. Because I think I've seen a lot of physicality in him, and there is an element of leadership in him. I'm just not sure how much, because obviously Lewis Dunk is the primary sort of captain in that side, and he's the one who's basically demanding everything, being the experienced head in there as well.
Yeah.
But they're both very good ball playing centre backs as well, in my opinion. I think they've both got that composure that we need, but they're also Premier League proven. And I think Brighton have been good, especially as a defensive unit, for how attacking they are. They've been defensively decent. I mean, obviously, they're always going to get ripped apart because overall quality in that team isn't the best, but it is hard.
Yeah.
But who would you go for, though? Like, who's the one that you'd be like, all right, you know what? If they got this in, I'd be well happy.
Well, yeah, Ben White. To be fair, I'd take Ben White. So I'd go with them.
I actually would like that to be the starting centre back pairing, to be honest. I mean, for 23, he's still good though. He doesn't have that many mistakes in him, and obviously we know who the left back's going to be, so I won't even bother asking. I could fill those ones in, and that is Katie. I'm presuming you're not really arguing, are you?
Nope, no complaints there.
And then obviously the centre back, one of the CDM is going to be Partey. But who would you want to partner? So this is a bit of what's realistically possible, obviously.
Yeah, I'd just go for Basuma, to be fair. I think that's a nice, safe option.
And he's Premier League proven, and that's the reason why I would go for him. I think, as much as like Zakaria interests me, as much as or who are the other ones that were linked to, that there's a few disappointing. But for me, Basuma's always been the one I think I've been screaming the loudest about, because I see a lot in him, and I think that intelligence that Arteta requires of his players, he's got. And I think the decision making that he makes is really good. And I think what happens is Partey is going to drop into a more deeper role, whilst Basuma becomes a box to box in this situation.
Yeah.
Because I think he's got a bit more. His ability to score a goal is a bit more than what I've seen of Partey. He can score a goal, he just hasn't. Now I think this is one where we might have questions whether, and that's just starting Cam. Because obviously you could put Buendia in, you could put ESR in, you could be putting the likes of Awar in, you could, or even Odegaard in potentially. But obviously,
yeah,
this is one. This is very hard. But for me, I am going to go with Buendia. For me,
I'd actually like to go for a different player.
go on.
Our's a shout. If we bring Our in, no complaints from me. But for me, the player I'd like to see is Mateus Pereira off West Brom. I think he's actually quality. He's shown it this year, how brilliant he's been. Literally, he scored a fucking absolute worldie against us, dribbled from his own half. He won't be too expensive because they've gone down, obviously. And Big Sam's leaving, so he's obviously going to be not too expensive. So for me, I'd like to see Pereira. But
yeah, because I play him on the right on FM. I completely forgot he could play down the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what? Yeah, because for me, right, he is that sort of ESR type player, in terms of he's got the ability to drive with the ball, he's got the ability to kind of score outside or inside, and he's got a banging free kick, which is one thing that we've not really been able. Because as bad as Willian is, one thing that he has offered us this season is free kicks, and especially those dead ball situations. And I think someone like Pereira, even Buendia offers that, but with Buendia, are we, with Pereira, obviously, he might be a lot cheaper and more obtainable because he's in the Championship, and for him, even Arsenal's a big, big step. And do you know what? I kind of will agree with you on that one.
I think the thing is if we get Buendia, Pereira, or Aouar, any one of those three, I'll take them because they're all good players.
I don't even know how to spell his name, to be honest.
It's Pereira. I mean, yeah, I'd take any one of those three, Aouar, Buendia, or Pereira, but my preferred choice would probably have to be Pereira.
I mean, what he's done at West Brom, out of look, the thing is, I wouldn't cry if Buendia came in. I wouldn't cry if Pereira came in. I wouldn't cry if Aouar came in. I think the options that we're linked to, I'm actually happy with any one of them coming in.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not that. That's why I think the cam position is one of the hardest to pick, because I actually wouldn't. It doesn't bother me who starts, which is good. At least we're identifying Like, I can't question one of their choices. For me, anyway, that's me. I know a lot of the fan base love to do that, but for me, I can't question any one of the cam choices. Whoever comes in, I'd be like, you know what? I get the signing, at least. Which nicely moves us on to the right mid, or the right wing, however you want to,
I don't know. I'd have to put Saka right wing, and then I'd go Pepe on the opposite flank. To be honest.
All right, that's covered both. Because I actually don't think we're going to get wingers. And the thing is, right, let's say, for example, we have those games where we need cover. Pereira's a good cover for the wing. We know he can do it because he has played out on the right for West Brom.
Yeah, I
So,
suppose the good thing is we have good attacking depth. We could play.
Yeah.
If Saka's not available, we could play Pereira on the right, Smith row 10, Pepe left, or we've got an option of Martinelli on the left, or even Aubameyang on the left if we have to. And then for me, striker, again, it's fairly obvious. I'd go for Aubameyang in the striker position.
Let's talk about that actually, because yeah, you're right, GK. Actually, Burnley does also play on the wing. This is what I mean. Like, I wouldn't care who, because even Awar has played on the wing this season.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying, like, I'm not too fussed by which of those options we bring in. Even if it is Odegaard again, I think I've seen enough of Odegaard to say, you know what, another season he might actually come good for us. But in that strikers, obviously, I do agree. I think it's going to be a Aubameyang, and I think Martinelli or Balogun will be the sort of understudies or the second choice to him. And do you know what? In this sort of setup, will we see the best of Aubameyang?
Yeah.
Because do you think it's a system, or do you think it's just him not being in form?
I think we have a chance creator and Pereira. I don't know. I think the new contract would have had something to do. I think this season, the new season will be a clean slate for him. A fresh start in a way. I think he'll be, but I think he'll be firing again next season. At least I hope so. But I mean, for me, there are other priorities that lie elsewhere in this squad, which are midfielder, which are right back, which are centre back. So yeah, I don't see the need in replacing a striker, to be honest.
No, that's what I mean. I think with Aubameyang being the first choice, and then you can put Martinelli or Balogun as a second choice, and then obviously, or you can have Martinelli as a winging option, and then obviously having Balogun as your sole second option. I think it's good enough. Like, obviously, we still don't know about what's happening with Lacazette and stuff as well. But this team personally, like, because Pereira, you know what? The one thing Pereira does do very well is those sort of looks for those runs in behind, which Aubameyang does a lot of. And that's one thing we haven't been able to pick out. And I think that's what Pereira can offer. And then obviously Saka's only going to get better. He's going to have because I know he will be part of that England setup. But how much of that will he play? Probably not a lot, to be honest, because I think there's going to be a lot more ahead of him unless there's major injuries. Which is good for us. I'd rather him get the exposure to it, because he'll learn, a big competition, big pressure, how to handle it, and he'll get that exposure from, like, Grealish. He'll get the exposure from, like, Harry Kane, Sterling, and all the great English attackers that we have as well, and obviously Luke Shaw if he ever does become an understudy at left back instead. So I think he can only get better. Nicola Pepe is just showing us leaps and bounds of what he can do. He's such an unpredictable player. I think with the sort of this team, Pepe is that unpredictable player. And that's the one we don't know what we'll get, which is a good thing. And that's, for me, like, what I do like this lineup, and I think this lineup, especially with then, if you think about the backup options. So if we went through it, Aubameyang's backup would be Balogun. I think that's good. Saka and Pepe, it'd be, there's three options. You've got ESR, you've got Martinelli, and then you've got Pereira. Like, I know Pereira will play, but you've and then you've got Saka, Pepe, and that's why I think the winger options and the number 10 are fine. I've got no problems with the depth there. The only problem is still that midfield, because if Partey or Basuma get injured, the only good thing is at least we'll have one solid midfielder constantly there. because the problem we've had is Xhaka has come in, or Dani Ceballos or El Neni have come in because Partey's been injured, and Xhaka isn't good enough to begin with. So at least this way, if Partey, let's say, gets injured, they've still got Basuma in the team who's good. So it's less of a worry for me. It's a 50-50 worry. Then obviously Aaron's, then you got Chambers or Cedric, or they'll be the two, I think, understudies, depending on who we end up keeping and selling. And then if you look at our centre back pairings, obviously we'll have Ben White, Gabriel, Saliba, Marie, and then potentially could be someone coming in. I think Rob Holding may end up staying. I don't know. I think he will. For me, I do think he'll be sold because the price will come in for him. The one thing that we haven't really discussed is Tierney's backup. Who would you like as a backup, or who do you think is realistic? Because I know Ryan Bertrand's being mentioned a lot.
Bertrand, yeah, would be an all right shout. Rico Henry off Brentford, he's a decent player. You look then the other one, Nuno Mendes from Sporting Lisbon. I think he's a good player. I haven't it's kind of hard to think about really because it's kind of
it's a backup.
what players would want to come and play that second like option role. I think Bertrand would probably take it, to be honest. He wouldn't have like a long contract. He wouldn't want high wages. He's done it in the Prem. So I suppose he'd be on a free as well. So it's not like we'd be having to use any of our summer funds on him. So I mean, Bertrand would probably be the best shout, to be fair.
Yeah, I see some comments from obviously he was saying Buendia. He was saying there's chances he's being offered our crosses instead of cutbacks and to his feet. Exactly, and I think Pereira, Sakape, they will be able to offer that a bit more. The truth is, Laka has been our most clinical. The reason he's our top, he ain't been clinical. I wouldn't go that far. Yeah, he's been our top scorer, but he ain't been. I think clinical is the wrong word to use because there's some questionable chances. Yeah, he's been more clinical, but he's not been clinical. Like I wouldn't personally say that. I don't know what. I think he's saying, would we take Wijnaldum?
No, Windau. He's a young left back from the Dutch league. He's actually a good shout, but I think the problem with Windau is he's quite young, so it kind of like he's a young up and comer that's got like, and Tierney's obviously relatively young as well, but yeah, Windau's a good shout. You've got that Tyrell Malacia guy as well from Feyenoord.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's loads of options there, but I think Bertrand would probably make the most sense from a business standpoint.
No, 100%. I actually agree. I think for me, Ryan Bertrand, only because he's free and he's Premier League proven, I think will give us enough time to, because we can get Bertrand in, let's say, for 2 seasons, and then sort out what we actually need to do where money is required, like your Basuma's coming in or Max Aaron's coming in, because these are first team choice players that we need. Because for a second choice, I'd rather go with a good player, but for the cheapest price. And that is basically what Bertrand is. He's a good player, he's got that ability to play like Tierney. He's not as good as Tierney, but he's got the Tierney-esque style where he likes to bomb forward. He's got a good cross on him, and he can also somewhat defend. So we've got to look for opportunities where we don't have to, because look, we're not a Chelsea, we're not a City where we're going to go and spend 50, 60 million on each position that we need. We've got to be realistic with that. So I do think Bertrand fits that profile. But obviously that is going to conclude most of it, unless Luke, have you got anything else to add?
No, that's pretty much it, to be fair.
Yeah, I don't think they had. I think we've been going for about an hour and 40 minutes. We've pretty much gone into detail on most of all the players and our reasons. So, this is going to obviously conclude. Obviously, if you've got any comments that you'd like to make, obviously get them in. We'll give you a few minutes while Luke gives himself a shout out. Where can they find you? What do you do? And
you can find me at Luke AFC on Twitter. Mostly find me live tweeting during most Arsenal games, and I'm also a regular on Let's Talk Premier League along with Sauce here. You know, we're pretty much the big boys of the Arsenal side of that channel. So you can find me there, and I started a while back and I stopped. I'm gonna start start streaming on Twitch again, doing some Football Manager stuff. So yeah, we'll have to see. But just
100%. When that does happen, obviously, I will share it with you guys anyway. So that's not a worry when that does start up. And oh, good question. I completely forgot to. All right, let's say, Luke, that is the 11. And obviously, given that Arteta will be the man, well, let's just say he is the man, because there's no point speculating that he's leaving. Let's just say this is the window he gets. These are the players he has. The bench is what we've made it, because obviously the players that we're keeping that are going to be depth that we've mentioned. Where do you realistically expect that team to finish with Arteta's sort of plan that he has?
That team.
All right, let's give a prediction with where that team should be finishing, and a prediction where you think it'd finish with Arteta. Or will it be the same?
Even with Arteta, I think that's a team that will finish in the top 6. I'm not going to say where, just going to say that team would finish in the top 6.
I agree, and the reason why I'm not going top 4 and being deluded about it, because it all comes. It's like, look, we can do our business and we can get the players in that we need, but we are still behind. We are still a few maybe windows behind the likes of United, the likes of City, with Liverpool's players returning from injuries and potentially getting the likes of Konate in and etc. They're only going to get better. So we have to be realistic what we can achieve. And I think if Arteta can get us into top 6 football and are really good cup runs, then I have no complaints with him. And I think a top 6 finish, really competing into that top. I think we need to compete for top 4. If we just miss out on it, I'll be fine with it.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because I do think against the top 6, we have been a little bit better. The only 2 concerns I have are Liverpool and City. They're the only 2 concerns I have, is whether he can ever beat them in the league. Because Chelsea, I believe he can still beat them, even if they go and improve. I still think he can beat United. I still think he can beat Spurs. And I still think he can beat... And the concern I have with him is, can he improve our form against the lower teams? Which for me is an easier fix, because that is going to require better quality of plays, and that's it, really. So a top 6 finish is what I'm expecting from what I've seen. And with that team, there's no excuses. If he's not even challenging top 4, like he can be 5th or 6th, but within sort of a game, like a 3-point difference or a 4-point difference between them. And I'll be like, you know what, fair play, you gave it your best shot. But that's what I'm expecting. And I'm expecting a fucking identity from this team, because right now, I know what Arteta wants to do, but I just don't see it from the players. So that's something I also want to see, is an actual identity to where we're going with this club. Like, are we going to be an attacking team? Are we going to be a more tactically disciplined team?
I want to see a more an identity about Arsenal. Kind of lost that in the last few years, and it's just getting like boring now.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's, for me and Luke, that's our season expectation is, number 1, I'll recap it. So number 1 is a good identity. I think number 2 is compete for the top 4. If we finish top 4, brilliant, like absolutely buzzing. But if we just miss out, I think that's the expectation, is compete for it. But if we miss out, fair enough. Like, at least give it a good chance to like go to the end of, like, we want to be sat here going into, let's say, Brighton, thinking there's top 4 is a possibility. Not, oh yeah, we're going to finish 7th. That's what I want. I want to be able to go all season thinking, yeah, there's still something to play for, which I do think it'll happen. And I think good cup runs, I think they're the 3 major like sort of expectations from the season. If we win a cup, brilliant. I do expect us to win or challenge for the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup, and I think I'll be happy. Conference League, I just couldn't, like I said, I don't really give a shit. I'm not even giving my prediction for it. But yeah, is that do you think you agree with that one, Luke, or did I miss something out?
Yeah, I think you've pretty much got a spot on there. I think if we qualify for the Conference League, I don't think we should focus on it. It's irrelevant, to be honest.
Yeah, just win the 21s, fringe players, just put them in there and just hope for the best, give them some first team exposure, really, and that's it. Yeah. I just couldn't give a shit. Even if we got to the final, I still think just give it to the under 21s or like, fringy players that need minutes and stuff, or players coming back from injuries. Yeah. But yeah, no, that obviously concludes it. If you do like me and Luke, we're going to do more. There's going to be more coming, obviously, with the developments in the window and obviously in the Euros. So obviously do subscribe, like, and obviously go follow Luke on his Twitter, which the link is in the description for. That's been me and Luke. Obviously, take care, people. And if you're watching on replay, put your comments down below. What do you think? Obviously, I'm going to put it on Twitter later on about the first team and also the tier list to see if you guys agree. But thank you very much for tuning in. And this is us signing out. Take care, people.